mindfulness isn't about putting a sticking plaster over stuff, but it does allow you to better cope with life's downs.
Power to Live More with Jo Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello. My name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Jo is interviewing Belinda Coaten of belindacoaten.co.uk. Belinda was introduced to us by the lovely Paula Gardner. As usual, she picked someone perfect for the show. Belinda is a coach specialising in career management, and she is also a mindfulness teacher. She combines the two together to deliver the what and the how to clients. She particularly enjoys working with real client issues to help people build confidence, gain clarity, identify strengths, review options and deliver change in individuals. Delivering open workshops and coaching in Cambridgeshire and Norfolk, she's written a free ebook, 7 Steps in 7 Days to Your Dream Job, and is a volunteer facilitator for a self-confidence women's development group. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Belinda Coaten of belindacoaten.co.uk. So thanks for joining me, Belinda. Really great to have you here.
Thanks, Jo. Good to be here as well.
Lovely. So start by telling us a bit about who you are, what you do and where you do it.
Okay, so 3 things there. So what do I do? It's probably the easiest thing to start with. So I work with people who are feeling not sure about their life at work, wanting to maybe think they need to change jobs, maybe don't know how to do that, or maybe just feel so bogged down with work, maybe even feeling a bit burnt out that almost can't see the wood for the trees. So I work with people who want to get some fresh perspectives in terms of their working life, what they want to do. And I've been doing that since 2001. And then more recently, the last 5 years, I stumbled across mindfulness. And with no plan at all, sort of 6 years, 7 years on, I'm now a qualified mindfulness teacher. So I merge both of those things together. So how I tend to think about it is the what is, I've worked with thousands of people and honed processes that work in terms of careers, job search, but also the mindfulness piece brings the how to it as well in there. So it sort of really combines the what and the how. So that's really what I do. Who am I? I am self-employed, as I've said, owner of 2 very delinquent Labradors who I've had to shut out the way so they don't get background noise. I'm also a carer, so I care for my husband. Yeah, and that's it really. Yeah, that's me.
And do you work from home?
Yeah, I do. So I've got an office at home, which is great. And I generally work around the Cambridgeshire and Norfolk area. Years ago, I used to TAS here, there and everywhere all over the country, and had a bit of a change of lifestyle really in the last 3-ish years. And so I've really cut back on that travel. So I use Zoom a lot, and that's great. So use that to communicate with people, connect with people, all over the UK, and I've even done some work recently with other people across the globe. So yeah. So I do get out and about. I do escape.
So a bit like with the podcast, and I keep saying I'm an international podcast host. Now I have my international guests. I say now, I've had them throughout the whole thing, but I keep sort of thinking, oh yes, I've got people from Australia and America and everything else. It's amazing how we just at the drop of a hat with all this technology now just talk to people all around the world in a way that we never could before in our businesses, isn't it? It's funny.
Yeah, and I was really, I've recently done some online learning, and it was delivered via Zoom tail end of last year, and I was really, I've been involved in learning development in a previous life, and I'm really anti, and I have to say it was absolutely fabulous. It was one of the best learning experiences I've probably had in a long while. In fact, I met people from such diverse backgrounds, built relationships. The course ended quite a long while ago, and we're still in having regular catch-ups, how things are going, and it was the quality of the learning was as good as if that person was sat next door to me. In a normal workshop environment. It was fabulous, really good.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. I mean, I'm a real fan of online stuff, and as much as anything else, because I like being in my home office and not going out. but yeah, there's a lot of sort of reticence to it still. I mean, we're still very much in the early stages, I think, aren't we, of getting people's heads around the concept of being able to do that. I mean, there's obviously companies that only work remotely, but in the main it's still quite a big development thing for people, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's changed. I think the whole piece, when I first started up, I can remember paying vast amounts of money, so I had a proper office address.
Yes.
Because you were presenting the image to the outside world that we've got this building, and there's not, that need isn't there anymore. It's much more flexible. But the other thing I hear, it's a real want, almost pretty much up at the top there in terms of, when I talk to people, okay, what are you looking for? Everybody, that's an exaggeration, but to be local and not have that travel is just real. And there seems to be some companies that are very open to it. Recently had a couple of clients who've managed to negotiate that, although I live in Cambridgeshire, actually, I can do some flexible working, and the base office is in Bristol. Yeah. And yet other companies is just, no, you have to be in the office, you have to be at that specific time. Yeah. And even clients being turned down for second interview because of a concern in terms of the length of the commute.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, just a bit of an aside, and sounds a bit of a random example, but I'm a secretary of my choral society, and our musical director lives about an hour and a half away from us, and when we interviewed him, there was lots of sort of questions about that whole travel piece, and to be fair, he has been stuck on the motorway, particularly for our last rehearsal before our concert, and we had to get somebody else in, but his point was, well, it's my choice, I want to go and sing with work with these people, so I make sure I'm there, and I'm there on time and everything else, and it's been really good. So it's something, I do believe it's the individual. Of course, as an organisation, you have to be comfortable that they're telling you the truth, but but again, it goes back to enlightenment, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah. And again, I've had met people who said, actually, I've got that hour commute, and I really love that because it allows me, in the morning it's space, and I listen to some podcasts, do whatever, and in the evening it really gives me a chance to unwind, chill out, and so by the time I walk through that door, I've had that transition phase. So
exactly. Yeah.
Everybody's different, aren't they?
Yes, that's true. So in common with most of my guests, you've obviously had some transitions and changes in what you do and what you offer. Tell us a bit more about why you do what you do now.
It's a mishmash of different things, really. So I passionately believe that we spend so much time at work, and the world of work has changed so radically and will continue to change, that we get, if you wind the clock back even 30 years, it was people were just doing a job, whereas people now, it almost gives a sense of identity, a sense of fulfillment, all sorts of different things. And so people spend a lot of time potentially at work. So I think it's really important that you enjoy it. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but to be as happy and fulfilled as you possibly can. And we don't still really get that much focus in terms of advice and guidance, in terms of what career, what choice is going to be right for me. And we're now in a world where, to a certain extent, we can mould and make a job ourselves and form a career ourselves with a whole piece of portfolio working. So it's important, and I think also I've been times I've had jobs that have been absolutely fabulous, and other times I've been quite unhappy at work, and it's the old adage, people I don't think leave the job, they actually leave their boss very often. And also I just find it absolutely fascinating. I get to work with a huge range of different people, and I work with them for a period of time, and I just find it fascinating, the insights, potentially people I would never normally meet, people's different perspectives, people's outlooks on life. Just to have that time with that person, I guess try and help and support them, and get some change going, get some shift going for them. Be that confidence, motivation, or some more practical things, really. So I guess, if I'm honest, I call it a very natural curiosity, is what I have. But I think in reality, it's that maybe a little bit of nosiness as well in there. But confident, totally confidential nosiness.
Lovely. So you talked about having reduced your travel and sort of changed to using Zoom, and you've also mentioned you're a carer as well. So how do you prioritise what you get done in your work and in your life, particularly working from home as well? How do you balance that, or not balance that? I don't believe in balance. How do you integrate that, is my word.
Okay. So the change came. My husband was diagnosed very unexpectedly with multiple sclerosis, and he had a pretty full-on job. He was a landscape gardener. He'd been an engineer for years, and we were both busy. And just through necessity, life changed. It's been very interesting. This was an interesting time. I mean, my husband was an engineer for about 30 years, and then he was made redundant. He was then self-employed for about 6 years doing the gardening stuff. And that was quite an interesting transition, because suddenly he wasn't at home all the time, but he wasn't going off to work as much. And we live in what was an upside down house. So I've got a front bedroom, as would have been. We've moved it back, but for some bizarre reason, when we bought the house, there was a lock on the door to this bedroom, and so I still have a key, a door with a lock, which is damned handy, so I can lock myself in without getting into interruptions. So I think that's the challenge of working from home, especially if there's other people in and around quite a lot, getting that focus. I'm going a bit off piece, but so to answer your question, I'm not particularly dogmatic about it, but I tend to, around springtime each year, do myself a little mind map, and think about some of the things that I'd like to do personally and professionally over the next 12 months.
Is there a reason why it's spring?
I think probably because I stumbled across the idea in spring, so I've sort of stayed with the spring piece.
Yeah. I guess it's new beginnings rather than January or September.
Yeah, it's just, I guess years ago that was sort of when I thought, oh, that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, and that gives me a bit of a roadmap. But I'm not, I said I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it. But I look at that and sort of get a balance of different things that I want to do. So that's sort of there in the background. And then the other thing I do, I am an addictive list maker and a bit of a to-do list, and I'm so prehistoric, it's all on paper, I'm ashamed to say.
Well, you were introduced by Paula, and she's our paper guru, so I'm not surprised.
I just love paper. I love stationery as well, but paper and pencil. I'm okay on the, quite IT literate, but yeah, something about paper and so yeah, it's doing that, and then blocking out that time. And I am and again, when I'm working with people, it's really interesting to talk about values. And one of my big values that most of the time our values are totally, in our subconscious. But going through this transition, thing that's really popped up for me is I have this huge value, which I definitely came from my parents, which was you work hard for a living.
Yeah.
So I don't have much, I don't really have much problem in getting in here and getting cracking on and doing stuff. But actually, it's not particularly served me well. Going through this transition where actually I need to be working a lot less and focusing on other things. It's been a real tussle because actually you do. You have to be in your office at 9, and so yeah, it's been really interesting. I think it's actually added. It's added in terms of the coaching and things that I do with people to have gone through that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I talk a lot about how I started focusing on sort of the productivity, the power to live more stuff when I had, my mum died and my late father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer, and I often say I wish we could learn those things without needing to go through that trauma. I think we end up appreciating it, but you sort of think,
absolutely.
Actually, could I not have learnt it some other way, please?
No, I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, Joe, and I think it's only when something, if that hadn't have happened, we'd have still been, both of us, going at 3 million zillion trillion miles an hour. And it is when something like happens, as you say, and something fairly life changing. You have to do that, and I do believe everything's sent for a reason. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It'd be quite nice actually if you didn't have. It was quite such a traumatic learning process.
Yeah, exactly. So you talked about using paper to manage getting stuff done. You said you like lists. So do you have just one list? Do you have lots of lists? Do you have a sort of process? How does that work?
I have a process that I sort of play with, and I don't do it all the time, but it does work if I've maybe got quite a lot on. So I sort of look at some of the things that from that big mind map thing and think about what some things I want to focus on. And on my wall, I just put up a flip chart with a grid on of the days of the month, and then I just sort of brainstorm out and think about, okay, well, what are all the different things I need to do to actually achieve whatever it is, X or Y or Z. And I do that on Post-its, so break it down into tasks, and then I then stand and put it on the wall, put the Post-its up on the flip chart, and that's a really good visual thing for me. You can
take the L&D out of the girl. No, what's the flip chart?
Oh, I know.
Sorry, carry on.
I'm laughing with you, hopefully. So that works for me if I've got something big and chunky to do, and that helps me plan out and think, well, actually that's not going to work because you said you'll do all of that on that day and this is happening. So that works. And just really blocking time out in your diary. But being flexible, I think, as well.
Yes, yeah. We another lesson we have to learn somewhere on the line, isn't it? Flexibility. Lovely. So, so you're mostly paper, but you do use technology, and you've mentioned Zoom. What are the other tools and apps that you use and find useful?
I'm okay on WordPress. I'm quite used to updating website and doing that sort of stuff. I use Beacon for doing updating and making my articles look snazzy and ebooks.
I've not heard of that. What's Beacon do? What does it allow you to do?
Beacon allows you to what does it allow you to do? So I had written under Paula's guidance an ebook called 7 Steps in 7 Days to Your Dream Job, and that originally started out life as an email piece, and I've morphed that onto Beacon, and it's turned it into an ebook for me quite quickly and quite easily.
Oh, okay.
So you do lots of different formats. So you could do checklists or booklets or things like that. And it just formulates things into looking quite sexy and exciting on that. So that's Beacon. Dabble with Canva a bit. I need to look into Canva a bit more because I haven't sussed out all the functionality on that. And that's it. I think apps, I sort of have LinkedIn app just for speed and easiness. I guess I'm not really an app person. I try and segregate myself from my phone as much as I can.
That sounds very formal. Segregate.
I do try and segregate, and I'm trying at the moment just to check my email twice a day. And leave it alone other times, and that seems to be working actually. It's just so, as you know, it's so easy. Something pings in, and
it's funny. I'd always read that was a good thing to do, and then about 3 years ago, I started just dealing with my email once a day, and it does make a massive difference. And I always intuitively sort of assumed it would, but couldn't quite do it. So, what about other people helping you to get stuff done? Obviously, you've mentioned Paula. That's the lovely Paula Gardner, who was on show 2 and show 65, I think, and introduces me to lots of my guests, including you.
So
PR.
And part of Paula's Action Learning group, and I love action learning anyway. I find that really useful. I belong to a few sort of local to me informal networking pieces. We've got quite an active Peterborough Women's Development community here in Peterborough. It's really good because we've got funding. So active in that. I facilitated, we were in a self-confidence group, so that ran last night. That was quite good. And actually talking about apps, there's a lady there, we were talking about building confidence and peripheral things to support us, and there's a lady there recommended an app, and she said it was a weather app. I've got it down somewhere. What did she say it was? Can I find it? I think it was Axe You Weather, and she said it's great, accurate weather, but it gives you lovely messages like things like "Go for it today," you know you can do it, stuff like that. So it's good. Well, not that I've used it yet. And I think having friends, close friends. Got lovely neighbours. Being a coach, I also subscribe to having regular supervision, and that again I think is really, really valuable. Really valuable to learn and things like that.
Lovely. So what about self-care? What about looking after yourself? And I'm quite interested, given the situation with your husband, whether you do carve out time for you, or whether you feel that actually you probably should do more because you need to keep yourself healthy to help him, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's well,
that's a very question.
Yeah, no, it's a really insightful question actually, because ultimately it does focus your attention that, you know, I've got to keep well, I've got to keep healthy. So I have a mindfulness practice. Which
so we're a bit mad if you didn't.
Yeah, and I've recently, the training that I've recently done, I've done something called mindful eating. So I've qualified as a mindful eating teacher, which is really about changing the relationship with food. And I think I've always eaten relatively healthily, but that's sort of changed my perspective really on things like that. I swim. Really fortunate where we are. There's a pool spitting distance from here, so try and swim pretty regularly. And obviously dog walking. Walking a lot, and
So tell us a little bit more about the eating mindfully, because I do think mindfulness is a bit of a sort of dark art as far as a lot of people are concerned. It's still a fairly new thing, isn't it? And I know it's not dark art, but you know what I mean? People sort of go, oh yes, whatever that is, and they don't entirely understand it. And you've just added in the food bit as well. And I think that'd be interesting to tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, okay. So if I explain my definition of mindfulness, that might help. I love that. It's a dark art. I was going to.
No, it's not. You know what I
mean? No, I love that. I love that because I think what's happened is it's become it's been infused into conversation. You know, people say we need to be more mindful, and so it started to be used quite ad lib within you know, the words and things we use. So mindfulness originated quite recently, mid 80s. A guy called John Kabat-Zinn, who was working out of Massachusetts, did some work and created a whole concept which has now moved on to what we call the 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program. So it's a program really that teaches people about how to become much more aware about what's happening with themselves, happening within their lives, and really how to cope with stressful situations better. So it's very practical, it's very pragmatic, and it builds within that 8 weeks. There's quite a lot of structure in there. And as part of that, people tend to think it's just meditation. It isn't. It's a lot more than that. But one of the foundations of it is really around the breath and focusing on the breath. And the reason for that, the reason John chose the breath to be the model of that, the module of that, is because the breath is always with us. You know, it never leaves us. But it's something that's very much we operate on automatic pilot. So one of the practices that we do, if anybody's been on any mindfulness core training, we do an exercise called mindful eating the raisin. And the learning behind that is for people to start to be aware of their automatic pilot, which drives all of us. So the MB builds on a lady called Dr. Jean Kinsella formulated the program, and she worked alongside John, and it's taking the essence of the mindfulness piece, but relating it to food. So it's not specifically around, if people want to lose weight, it can be focused around loss of weight. It's really around changing the relationship to food, and really fascinating, you know, starting to work with people and understand, you know, creating that pause, you know, stimulus as a response, and in between what we're doing with mindfulness is creating pause. And within that pause, it's about giving us more choice in terms of how we react and what we do. So with regards to the eating, it's really helping people understand more about what are you hungry for? Is it food? And if it is, go eat whatever you want to eat. But it's really lots of people, and I certainly was eating because actually I feel I've got that report to do. I'm just going to have a little lunch, and that was me. But other people, it would be lots of different things. They're feeling maybe a bit undervalued, a bit unloved, or whatever. So we get a very structured program to work through that.
Yes, yeah, interesting. Thank you. I think that will help people to understand that better. So what about relaxing? I guess some of the things that you've talked about in terms of looking after yourself and your mindfulness is part of that. Do you do anything else in terms of your own relaxation?
Yeah, I do something. I get in the car, and we get in the car and we go down the A47, and something happens. So we go to Norfolk. I don't know if you've ever been to Norfolk.
I have.
Yeah, I didn't discover Norfolk for years. So, and there's a specific roundabout, and I sort of turn off there, and the landscape changes and something happens. You just go, and it's just a very, very different way of life. There's no motorways. Shops don't open on Sunday. I've got to drive 10 miles to get a supermarket.
Last time I went to Norfolk, I was in my caravan in it's sort of like the northeast bit of it. It's a big old stately home, and I can't remember what it's called. It was the National Feast of Lanterns with the Camping and Caravanning Club. And you, with your comments about technology and mindfulness, will have been really happy because the mobile access was rubbish. Me, on the other hand, was a bit traumatised.
Yes, exactly. It's very difficult to get a signal. It can go like a wisp of thing, but people talk to you. There's a lady over there who I know, and she rents quite a few holiday homes, and she describes it. I'm trying to think of her marketing blurb, but it's just lovely. It's something like, come to Norfolk to find to find a place that used to be where time stands still, people converse, and something else. I can't remember things, but it's just spot on.
Yeah, you are painting a good picture of it, apart from the mobile thing, I have to say. I'm off to Scotland shortly, and we camp in a field on the in the middle of nowhere, basically, over a dune from the beach, and I've had 4G there for like years. so I do combine the two, I have to admit.
I can tell you the spots where you can get it. So
yeah, lovely. That sounds really idyllic, and I love it's sort of like a ritual, isn't it? That driving, the fact that you described it as driving down the motorway and then turning at a certain roundabout.
It's just this point, the landscape changes radically, and it's just. You can just feel everything drop, and the other interesting thing is, I do still work over there quite a bit, but I'm always finding myself, actually, I don't want to work over here. And I find it is a complete shutdown, switch off place, and just really recharge. I've never been anywhere like it, anywhere in the world, and I've done quite a lot of travelling, but it's amazing.
Yeah, lovely. So you briefly mentioned having taken a course, and I can't remember whether that was when we were on the podcast or before we started. It was at the beginning of the interview, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And self-development. What do you do to learn and improve yourself? I mean, you've obviously qualified recently for different sort of offerings that you can provide for your clients. So clearly you're moving forwards all the time. What sort of things do you do?
Oh, lots of things. I think I'm a self-confessed learnaholic, really. Yeah, I, if I, if I did nothing in the world, I'd just go on courses and probably
Yeah.
enroll on the Open University. So, yeah, I do. I don't have a structure for it, but regularly, I like going on one-day events. I like going on networking type events. Yeah, just I haven't at the moment. I haven't got any courses or anything going. You know, I've done coaching courses. I've done neurolinguistic programming courses here and abroad. I've recently done the MBE, mindfulness eating. I've done one-to-one relationship mindfulness. So it's just, yeah, it just goes on really, and I really, 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 really enjoy it. I probably don't. I'm not a. I mean, I do read, but I read complete trash, to be honest. I'm not a particularly business book. You know, I read them if they're part of a course that I'm doing, but I don't, you know, sit and read that. I'll read other bits and bobs. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Plugging into
So
webinars on the internet and stuff. Yeah, but it's all. I guess it tends to be a bit ad hoc rather than structured. We're dabbling. My friend's given us her piano, so you know, I'm dabbling at the moment, learning the piano.
oh, lovely. That's what I do when I make my cups of tea. I go and have a little practice on the piano.
Yeah.
Lovely. Oh, it sounds like you need to find a course then. You seem
Yeah, I have identified. Yeah, I have identified somebody actually who teaches piano, but yeah, not got there
yet. Lovely. So, what about routines and rituals? We've already talked about your ritual for relaxation, going to Norfolk. Are there certain things that you do at certain times in certain ways to make sure things get done, or that to keep you sane, and you know, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think one of the things I tend to do. I think we're really very forward looking. You know, with that to-do list, it's very future focused and you know, quite future things. So what I try and make time for towards the end of each month is just to go back through that diary and just have a reflect on some of the things. So it's looking back and thinking, okay, you know, what did I find challenging in the last month? And maybe things that were challenging. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I ran a new workshop. So, you know, that had been quite a challenge putting it together for the type of audience that it was. So, you know, reflecting on that, you know, what went well, what did I learn from it? What did I take from that? And I find that really useful, you know, just to reflect back really, and, you know, some of the things you think, oh gosh, you know, I'd forgotten I'd done that, because you're so forward in terms of thinking about the next thing you're going to do. So that works for me, that reflection piece.
Yeah.
I don't think I really have any daily routines apart from the blooming to-do list. And I guess an evening routine might be a little glass of Prosecco, maybe.
I like that one. Well, I'd probably go for a large glass. Lovely, excellent. So what about if things don't go right? What about if you have a bad day? How do you deal with that? How do you get through that? The Prosecco, probably.
Yeah, I think doing even a short mindfulness exercise, just one of the practices is called sitting practice, and that just really allows you to focus in on what's going on for you at the moment, in terms of, you know, what's going on in the mind, what's going on in the body, and what's going on with the feelings in terms of the emotional piece. So that, I think, is invaluable. If it's been a bad day, that really grounds me, settles me. And I have to say, I don't have that many bad days, to be honest.
No. Well, I guess that's the beauty of the mindfulness in the first place, isn't it? It's I talk a lot about my gratitude 3 things that I do every day that I've been doing religiously since January, and I really feel that's made a big difference on those ups and downs. And would you say the mindfulness helps without you specifically doing it, as in you don't get those bad days because you've got that regular sort of investment in it?
I wouldn't say you don't get bad days at all. So, mindfulness isn't about putting a sticking plaster over stuff, but it does allow you to better cope with life's downs when they come. It just allows you to get a much better perspective on things. So it just allows you to be with things much more effectively. So I'm not saying that isn't what it's about at all. And it's fair to say, and it's not for everybody. There's a lot of evangelical people going, it's perfect. It isn't for everybody. So,
no.
but if it works for me, if it works for some people, then that's great.
Yes, yeah. So what about a day where you end the day knowing that you've had the chance to live more? And I talk about that being getting the chance to do the things you really want to do, not the things you should do or you have to do. What does that day look like?
That day is where I've maybe been somewhere new. So maybe somewhere where I haven't been before, which has been a really nice place, somewhere that I've really enjoyed, where I've potentially met new people, where definitely I've had some stimulating conversations. So being with people, definitely around having a lot of laughter and having a lot of fun, but also that conversation piece, talking to people, meeting people, hearing people's perspectives.
Yeah, no.
And the day when you sort of asked me that question, the thing that pinged into my mind, I recently went to a lunch. It was a birthday lunch, and I knew the person whose birthday it was, and I knew one other person. This was about 2 weeks ago, and the person had. It was a lovely idea. It was her birthday, and she said she wanted to ask influential people who've been influential in her life, influential women, and I thought it was just such a lovely idea. So very few people knew each other because they were from sort of different compartments of this person's life. But it was a really lovely day. We had lunch, and just a real diverse mixture of people, women, all met with this one person in common. We just had such a good time. And it was all those things.
I love the sound of that. I was talking the other day about how, on reflection, I realised that I don't really like small talk when you go to those sorts of things. So when I look back and see, those events where I've enjoyed them or not, it's been those sorts of things that you've just described, where you do get the chance to talk more deeply to people, which I guess was quite a natural thing because she'd picked you all for a certain reason, which probably gave you all something in common other than her.
She said afterwards, she said, what a relief that you all got on.
Yes, yeah, interesting. Lovely. So thank you so much for joining me, Belinda. It's been really interesting talking to you, and having that focus on what you do has been a real sort of addition to the questions as well. So how can people find out more about you and connect with you?
Well, just say thank you, Jo. I enjoyed talking. I've especially enjoyed talking to you, so thank you for your time. My website is all the W's, belindacoaten.co.uk, and also if you just search for my name on LinkedIn, I think there's only one Belinda Coaten, you should find me.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo.
All this information is available in the show notes on the website, and if you use the link powertolivemore.com / in this case 71, then you'll be able to find them. I'm recording this on little Dodsey's birthday. She's 12 today, and I was just looking back on Facebook memories, and it did say a few years ago that she told me I could keep calling her little Dodsey until she was 12. So I don't know if that means when she turned 12 we'd have to stop, or whilst she's still 12 it's okay. So whether we've got another year or not. So on last week's newsletter I shared a tool which I found as a result of a Google search. So as I said in the newsletter, if you know me, you'll know that quite often when I need to do something, or I've found a sort of something that's annoying me or isn't doing what I need it to do, I'll go off Googling and see if I can find a solution. And I was finding that I use a Windows laptop and I have an iPhone and an iPad. And I do actually use bookmarks on my Chrome browser on my laptop quite extensively. And I don't tend to use them on the mobile devices as much as anything else because I'm using Safari on there and they don't exist. So the ones that I create on my laptop weren't syncing obviously to Safari because they wouldn't, because that's Chrome and Safari is a different browser. So I thought to myself, there must be a way of getting these to sync or at least copying them into the Safari bookmark system. So I went off Googling and sure enough, I found an extension for Chrome, which is called the iCloud extension. And it's not just for what I need it for. You can also use it to sync your iCloud photos and also your documents that you're saving if you are in iCloud to your Windows laptop as well. But for me, it was about the bookmarks. So I installed it on my laptop and pretty much straight away, it synced the bookmarks that were in Chrome with those that I have on Safari, and I've been able to go in and edit so that I've just got the ones that I want, as opposed to, you sometimes you end up with stuff, bookmarks that you haven't really organised, and I hadn't really organised the ones on my mobile devices. So now I've organised them so that basically the bookmarks that I've got in both places are the same and they are constantly syncing. And so that's really cool. So when I'm on my iPad and I want to find something that I would normally just use a bookmark for on my laptop, I now can. So that's really cool. So I've shared that with you. If you just go into the Chrome extension directory and just do a search for iCloud, or just into Google and just search for iCloud Chrome extension for Windows, and the link to that will pop up if that's something that's been causing you some botheration too. And in that newsletter, I also launched my challenge for September, which I spoke about, I think, on last week's podcast. So basically, from the 1st of September for 30 days, so every day in September, I'm going to be emailing out to people who want to take part in the challenge a link to a blog post. So there'll be a different one every day. So that's 30 blog posts with lots of tips and strategies around how to reduce and avoid burnout and reduce fatigue. I just figured it was a good time of year to do it after all the enjoyment and perhaps excesses of the summer holidays, and also with that whole back to school feeling. I don't know about you, but I've always really loved September for sort of a new start and having everything fresh and, all your pencils and your rubbers and everything all brand new, ready for school. So I figured September would be a good time to think about how we can organise our lives so that we can get to live more, which is what I talk about, as you know, getting to do the things that you want to do, but also doing that in a way that we're not completely burning out or just sort of overcommitting ourselves, so that, we end up so tired we can't really appreciate it. So yeah, I'd love you to join me in the challenge. There's, as I say, a daily email from me, and it won't be really onerous. I did consider calling it something other than challenge because that makes it sound even more daunting. But, I guess people know what a challenge involves. So I've left it as that, but it won't be too challenging. There'll be a daily email, a link to the blog post, and there's also a Facebook group so that we can share, the things that we're doing and trying and what's working for us as well. So I'd really love you to join us in that. If you're interested, please go to joedodds.com/challenge burnout and you'll be able to sign up there. Or if it's not for you, but you know somebody who you think would really benefit, then please feel free to share that link with those people. I'd really love to see if I can help them during the month of September. So again, the link is joedodds.com/challenge burnout. And again, the show notes for this week's show are at powertolivemore.com/71. And we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.